Are you struggling in your current season of life? Do you feel like life is happening to you instead of for you? No matter your season or your circumstance, I would love to show you that it is possible to create a more joyful life. Are you ready? Let's go. Happy Tuesday, my friends. Welcome to my podcast, Seasons of Joy. In this episode, number 3, we are going to be talking about pausing to ponder. This is the second part of the 3-part principle that I am teaching called the pause principle. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, Pause to Process, I encourage you to do so and see how it fits together with pause to ponder. To me, pondering is about getting curious and asking questions. Questions reveal existing thoughts, and they can also help direct the mind to think new thoughts. One of the most powerful questions is why. It seems simple and innocent enough, but it inspires increased consciousness. By asking ourselves why, we can go inside our minds and find the meaning and intention that drives us. For a long time, I was running on autopilot in my life. I was operating from what I learned in my youth, in the culture around me, in my religion, from my parents, right? I didn't really question these things, certain things, and I didn't take the time to evaluate whether some of those beliefs I had still applied. I was living a reactionary life. I wasn't writing a new story. I was living a recycled one. I wasn't asking myself questions, so I wasn't creating more of what I wanted in my life. I'd lost connection with myself, with others, and with God. Many people believe that their environment, their culture, their religion, their family, their boss are causing them not to have the life they want. But the truth is, we all create what we do or don't have in our lives. Now, this isn't about blaming ourselves, but it's about taking responsibility, and this is so empowering. If we are the ones that are creating what we have right now in our lives, we have the power to create something different. When I began to ask myself questions, high-quality questions, empowering questions, I was able to get creative and inspiring answers. These questions helped my brain begin working on searching for solutions, for answers. So what do I mean by an empowering question? I want to begin by talking about disempowering questions first. When we ask ourselves a negative question, we actually get a negative answer, which is very disempowering. For example, if you ask yourselves, why can't I lose weight? You may find all kinds of answers that don't serve you, such as, I'm too old to lose weight, I have no willpower, I'm lazy, it's just not possible. All the reasons why you can't lose weight, which invites the negative, self-defeating answers. These questions themselves actually incorporate negative beliefs, which in turn leads the brain to look for ways to prove that particular thought true. However, if you were to incorporate an empowering belief into the question, you will actually come up with an answer that is just as empowering, such as, how have I been successful at this? Or how can I enjoy this process? Or how will this be fun? Questions like these lead you to find positive thoughts that will help you focus your mind on finding creative and wonderful ideas and solutions that will actually help you reach your desired goal. You will find wisdom within you that you might not have known existed. The higher quality question, the higher the quality the answer will be. So I invite you to take a moment right now and just think for a minute and see if you can identify the questions that you ask yourself on a regular basis. Is there one that's especially hard for you? Is this question empowering or is it not? And if it isn't, I encourage you to change it immediately and invite you to find a question that will work for you and then write it down on a post-it note and post it. Put it in your bathroom, in your closet, on the mirror, anywhere that you can see this question and reflect on it. You'll be amazed at what your brain will come up with by just asking the right questions. Once I was able to process the emotions I was creating for myself, as I talked about in our last week's podcast, I was able to pause and ponder who I actually wanted to be, what I wanted to create in my life, and what I wanted to put out into the world while I'm here on earth. When I wasn't allowing myself to process my emotions, I was actually blocking myself from creating a life on purpose. I was living a reactionary life. And again, I wasn't allowing God to help me write my story. The story I was writing was one where I was starring as the victim instead of the hero. But once I allowed myself time to process and then ponder and ask empowering questions, I began to discover and rediscover things I enjoyed doing. Instead of believing I was a victim of my circumstances, I understood now and believed that I was now a creator. Rediscovering who I was, it allowed me to move away from being only focused on myself. Actually, rediscovering myself allowed me to connect with myself through questions, which opened me up to connecting with others more and with God more. Another part of pausing to ponder is holding space for ourselves. As humans, we all have opinions that we like to insert into the stories we tell to try to convince and sell other people on our point of view, right? We have friends and family that we share these stories with, and they may react to what we're saying by agreeing or disagreeing. And this isn't holding space. It's the opposite of holding space. And we may do that as well as people share their stories. We may agree or disagree and jump right in. But holding space is different than that. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't times when we don't want to be that friend that validates our friend's struggle or validates their belief that someone's mean, right? Or have a shoulder to cry on. We may want to show up that way, but if we want to create change in our life, then we need to hold space for ourselves and for other people. And what holding space means is viewing from a neutral but loving place where thoughts and emotions can be examined, unraveled, and understood from a place of curiosity and not judgment. One of the best ways to hold space for ourselves is to ask ourselves questions. What are we thinking, feeling, doing, or creating? When we can question our thoughts, we can be empowered. When we're experiencing a problem, if we can just step back and ask some questions, things will open up for us. I'm going to give you 7 questions that you can ask yourself, and I'll include some examples to show you the power of that question. There's so many more, but this is just a taste of some questions that you could ask yourself. So question number 1, what if I'm wrong about all of this? Oftentimes when we're struggling with somebody and we are so focused on being right that we actually aren't open to other possibilities. Now, you may be rolling your eyes and saying, well, there are times I am just right. And that may be true. But what if you could be open to being wrong? Now, it isn't about saying you're wrong and they're right. It's about being open to the idea, inviting the possibility of being wrong. When we hold so tightly to being right, we actually limit our ability to connect with ourselves and others and God. And if we can open up to the possibility of being wrong, we may be able to soften and develop some compassion and curiosity and self-reflection, which actually invites connection. Number 2, what else would I want to believe? What else do I want to believe? So many times we have this all or nothing thinking. So, for example, many of us who want to lose weight struggle with loving and accepting ourselves and the idea of losing weight. We believe that we can't fully love ourselves until we lose the weight. We think that somehow if we are unkind and unloving or, pressure ourselves, that we will create this change. But we may experience some change, but it will be short term. It won't last very long. We think that we can only hold one belief or the other. I love and accept myself, or I want to lose weight, is what we think we need to believe. But the opposite is true. We can actually love ourselves and want to lose weight. We can choose to believe both. Number 3, I wonder why I'm choosing this thought. Of all the thoughts in the world, sometimes we deliberately choose thoughts that do not serve us. There was a time in my life that I believed I wasn't good enough because of the choices I made in my past. I carried this belief that I wasn't good enough and the choices I had made in this hypothetical purse, and I took it with me everywhere I went. Of all the thoughts I could think, the one I chose was I wasn't good enough. And I chose that for a long time. At the time, it didn't feel like a choice. It felt like a fact. But the truth is, it was a lie. And I was choosing it over and over again. The truth is, all thoughts are optional. We can choose to believe whatever we want. Now, instead of believing I am not enough, I actually believe I'm a human being and I'm having an earthly experience that comes with choices. And sometimes those choices are painful and sometimes they are not so painful, but it all includes learning and growing and becoming. And my experiences and my choices have made me who I am today, and I love me. Sometimes it feels impossible, but what is the downside of choosing something different? Again, why am I choosing this thought? What would feel better? Which leads me to question number 4. What feels most like love? Sometimes we just have to step back and ask ourselves this question because love always feels better and it is always available to us. The other day, I had an experience where I had texted one of my children to invite them to dinner the following day. And this child didn't text me back until 15 minutes before the scheduled dinner time. Now, there were a few ways I could have handled this situation, and many of them went through my mind. The first was I could have texted them about how disappointed I was and point out how inconsiderate they were and feel frustrated all evening long. Number 2, I could have just ignored the text and given the silent treatment and then complained to my spouse about how inconsiderate it was and feel frustrated all evening long. See the pattern here? But there was another choice. I could ask myself this question: what feels most like love? Then that actually leads me to consider that there may be a good reason he didn't text me sooner. And there really wasn't wrong. And there's nothing wrong with me. It's just different than what I thought. It was just something that happened, and I reminded myself it really wasn't a big deal. It was just a dinner. And then I could send a text that says, no worries. And again, the question is, what feels most like love? Which response felt better and generated a feeling of love versus frustration? Something to consider in any interaction we have, whether it be with ourselves or others. Number 5, how do I want to feel? If we can identify how we want to feel, then we can begin discovering thoughts that will help us create that emotion. Many times we don't take the time to consider how we want to feel. For a long time, I felt frustration for the things that other people were choosing that was outside of my control. I would just live with this frustration, believing that life was happening to me and that this emotion was just happening to me. Now, for me, it wasn't about feeling happy about the things that people were choosing, but it was about choosing deliberately and intentionally to feel something that served me better. I decided I wanted to feel curious instead of frustrated. This has been so good for me. I have practiced and have become better at feeling curious instead of repeating frustration. Often I get there by saying either out loud or in my head, "That's interesting." And right away the frustration softens. And then I can move into seeking to understand. And it also helps me not resist the things outside of my control, and at times create a feeling of compassion. So inviting curiosity can also invite other emotions that feel better than the frustration I was feeling at the time. So number 6, who do I want to be? This is one of my favorite questions. Again, looking to the future at who we want to be in 5 minutes, 3 months, or 10 years. Who do I want to be in this moment when things outside of my control happen? Do I want to mirror the emotions or actions of others, such as hate, anger, or unkindness? Or do I want to use my agency to create more love, compassion, or joy? When somebody posts something online that I don't agree with, do I jump on and begin to tell them what I think of their opinion? Or when someone I am doing business with is frustrated and angry about something that is outside of my control, do I match his frustration and anger? Or do I ask myself, who do I want to be in that moment? Do I want to be accountable for the things that are within my control, calm in my response, and non-judgmental of his reaction? Again, the question is, who do I want to be? Whether it be in 5 minutes, 3 months, or 10 years from now. And finally, number 7, what result do I really want? Have you allowed yourself to slow down enough to consider what you want to create more of in your life? Living a reactionary life will not create the results that you want in your life. In our culture, women have often put their wants aside as they care and nurture loved ones. If we aren't careful, we can lose connection with ourselves, and we might forget what we used to like to do, or even what we've dreamed of doing. But by defining where we want to go, then we are better able to intentionally choose the actions that will get us there. And in no way I am suggesting that we shouldn't care or nurture our loved ones, right? It's just about being mindful. Are we caring for ourselves so that we can better care for our loved ones? Taking the time to really view what results you want to create in your life and doing so intentionally. And when we take the time to pause, to ponder, to ask ourselves these questions, we open ourselves up to so many more possibilities. There's so much power in pondering. Now, I invite you to ask yourself more questions and see what you discover. Thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for next week's episode for the 3rd and final part of the pause principle, and have a joyful week. If you want to learn more about me, go to seasons-coaching.com. I would love it if you would share this podcast with your friends and family. And if you enjoy it, please leave a review. We'll see you next time.